I'm a blank slate, so throw anything at me and we'll just get the conversation going.
I love it. Mike, great to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into your world of being an entrepreneur, podcast host, all these wonderful things, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this pandemic changed our lives, our world, so many things. How did you get through that 2020 era, and how is it radiated into your 2025 world today?
Joe, that's a great question. It didn't really land on us. I mean, other than personally, the stupid shutdowns and the stupid masks and the stupidness of our reaction to it. And I say that in hindsight. In the moment, I really can't blame the experts because they did what they thought was right at the time. We've learned a lot since then. But so I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But other than the personal inconvenience, the from a business standpoint, it didn't touch us. We were very fortunate. We're in the electronics assembly industry. We're part of the ecosystem that builds circuit boards and builds electronics. And the day after California shut down, quote unquote, shut down, we were the first state to announce a shutdown of all non-essential businesses. We got letters from the Department of Defense, in essence, saying, "Don't even think about shutting down. You're an essential business. You must stay open." Just short of we order you to stay open,
Yeah.
and that's all I needed. So we were very fortunate there, and there's certain things that just don't stop. The medical world. I mean, that actually increased. But there's certain things people need to eat, people need to drink. So there's certain things that are basic necessities. It turns out military hardware and defense hardware and all that kind of stuff is kind of one of those things. So we stayed busy through the whole time. Now it changed. There's some silver linings there, Joe, because it changed the way we looked at virtual events. We were doing virtual events for the last 15 years, and so that wasn't new to us. But we just dove headfirst into it, and all of our in-house, all of our live workshops, technical workshops that we produced, we just did them virtually. And what really landed on us as a benefit was not so much that we got more comfortable with virtual. We were doing virtual before, as I said, but our potential customers, our industry got more comfortable with virtual. And now, well after the pandemic is over, more meetings are done virtually, like you and I are meeting now, than were before the pandemic. I don't think the word Zoom was known in the context it's known today before the pandemic. And so it made it easier for us to host virtual events. Not easier technically for us, but a lot more successful in terms of engagement with our industry. So I guess there was a silver lining out of that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the heart and soul of what you do, all of the things that you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids, 12-year-olds. It's in a school, it's career day, and one of the kids is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Oh my gosh, Joe, I did a career day at my daughter's school, and I speak for a living, right? I travel around the world and I talk to scientists and geeks and things like that, and entrepreneurs. And the scariest thing was in front of a bunch of fifth graders. They were brutal, Joe. They were brutal. I couldn't get away with anything.
Yeah.
Um, but I have two answers. One answer clears a room. If I'm at a cocktail party and I want to clear the room, I'll tell someone exactly what I do, which is I build cleaning machines for circuit boards to remove residues to improve reliability. By the time I say the word reliability, the room is empty.
Yeah.
But what I tell young people is I'm in the industry that builds everything that you have that plugs in the wall or has a battery in it,
Okay.
and,
Yeah.
and like, you build my Game Boy? He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike does not build the Game Boy.
Right.
Mike's industry builds the Game Boy, the industry Mike's part of. So I connect with something that they think is cool. and then take all the credit for it. That's how I relate what I do to the kids. And then if they're super geeky and interested, then I can go down more of a technical rabbit hole.
Yeah, for sure. I remember years ago when I was in a transitory period between corporate America and I got into nonprofits. I was working for the United Way. I was doing campaigns. I did a campaign for a school district, and we had a sportscaster that came in and they were going to speak to the kids. He was terrified. He's like, I can get in front of the camera and speak to the entire city, no problem. Like literally no trepidation. The minute you get me in front of kids, I completely seize up. He was a mess. I would have never expected it, but there's certain people, there's triggers, and that's it.
Well, mine, I found it easy to talk to the kids until one kid. I got PTSD now with kids because this one kid, um, we were talking about college. And, of course, I'm just assuming all these kids are going to go to college. And this one kid said, "Did you go to college?" I'm like, damn, oh no, because that's always a tough one for me because I dropped out of college.
Yeah,
And and I lecture amongst scientists and PhDs and engineers. And I I used to suffer greatly from imposter syndrome because I kind of fit the definition of an imposter. I speak at universities today to college to either postgrads or people in their last year, engineers mostly, about entrepreneurship. And that imposter syndrome lurks in my mind,
yeah,
because it's like, what am I doing here? But this, so I told the kid, well, no, I didn't. And then I was a little bit disingenuous, and I said, and I regret it to this day,
yeah.
which actually, Joe, is not true. Um, and the kid looked at me and went, "You can go now." I'm like, oh, I just wanted to, slap the kid. Not
Yeah,
really, but just
yeah, yeah,
figuratively.
yeah,
But he was right. The kid was right. It's
yeah,
like, so I had to, that kid taught me a lesson. And it's like, no, own it up, Mike. I didn't go. I didn't go. Okay, fine.
yeah.
But what I'm really concerned about is giving the impression that you can be successful without going to college.
Right.
I mean, you can be. I mean, but I don't want to promote that. There is some element of regret, although the regret is more, I feel a little bit disingenuous when I'm standing at a lectern facing a bunch of scientists,
Yeah,
But fortunately, others way more successful than me have already proven that there is a path for that. It's
yeah,
just a little bit more difficult
yeah,
than it would be otherwise.
for sure. So, what did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream job?
I wanted to fly planes.
Okay, okay,
I wanted to be a pilot, and I finally got my license when I was 30. But I was the geeky kid on the playground that when I heard a plane, I would look up, and I could tell you what airline that plane was. I could tell you the type, the aircraft type. I knew it all. Particularly commercial aviation. I like military planes too, but I was always an aviation geek, and I
yeah,
thought, well, I'm just going to join the Navy and fly planes. And then when I got old enough to join the Navy, I realized that you know, people who don't go to college don't fly their planes, and because you have to be an officer, and B, um, it takes a lot of years, and they take one out of every 10,000 people, or some terrible odd like that. I'm like, okay, no, I don't want it that bad.
yeah, yeah. So, what were the foundational elements that were put into you to become an entrepreneur, to get into aviation, to podcasting, all of these things that have been a part of your world? What were the foundational seeds? And are you originally from Southern California?
Yeah, I'm a California boy. I was born in Northern California, born in
Okay.
Berkeley, but I've always been in California. Joe, I refer to myself as the reluctant entrepreneur. Because no part of me wanted to start a business. That was not in my wheelhouse or my wildest fantasies. I am clever. I'm very creative, and I've got a good technical acumen, and that stemmed from my very early childhood desire to understand how everything worked. I I had this insatiable curiosity about, how things actually worked. And I used to get in a considerable amount of trouble because I would take all my parents' appliances apart when they were at work, which was not the act that got me in trouble. The act that got me in trouble is I had less desire to put it all back together properly. But I got this technical skill. I learned to code when I was in high school, on a teletype machine because there were no CRTs back then, no monitors back then. And so I learned that skill. And I was working in the electronics industry as my first job. I got a job as a startup at a startup in the electronics industry, and I was their sales manager and employee number two. And there was a government regulation that was coming down that was going to affect how a certain part of our industry would function. And the industry was freaking out. It's like, oh, we can't, they were banning a certain chemical that was used in certain types of cleaning applications for electronics. And the industry was freaking out because there was no replacement chemical. And, we're going to be doomed. And I had an idea. Let's just design this different technology that would not need that chemical. It would use, something much safer and available. And let's sell that. Let's take advantage of this government regulation instead of trying to come up with another chemical. Let's just get the chemical out of the equation. And I pitched it to my boss, and he said, "Nah, not interested." And so I sweetened the pot. I was so obsessed with this idea, Joe, that I offered to design it and build it and pay for all that on my time with my money, which I didn't have much. And he says, okay, well, all right, just don't use any company time. I said, fine. So I nights and weekends converted my garage to a mad scientist laboratory and got to work. And about 5 or 6 months later, I came up with a prototype, and I brought it into the company, put it on a truck, brought it into the company, and he liked the way it looked, and he goes, "Does it work?" I said, "Yeah, beyond my wildest dreams, it works better than I expected." And he goes, "Wow, this is actually impressive." And we had a trade show coming up in a few weeks. So I just said, let's just stick the company name on it, throw it in the show and see what happens. And we did. And we took orders for 5 of them right there during that 3-day show.
Yeah.
So that was like, okay, wow. Now I had a dilemma. I had to build these things at night and weekends and sell them during my day job. And it turned out I was much, much better at sales than I was at production. I'm a good designer. I'm not a good assembler. I'm not that part of me just, I don't know. It doesn't excite me. I'm not good at it. I don't really want to be good at it. So I had this dilemma. I couldn't keep up with production, and my my company that I was working for was getting frustrated. The customers they were selling to were getting frustrated. So I realized that, something's got to go. So I went back to my boss and I said, here's what it cost me to design it. I mean, pretty much to the penny. If you want to buy the rights to it, I'll sell it to you for my cost. Thinking, well, now I have a more stable job. The company's going to be more successful at selling a lot of these things. Everything trickles down. We'll do it that way. So
Yeah.
I sold it to him. And then I had these delusions of grandeur, Joe. We had a meeting scheduled about a year later where it was a product development meeting to talk about the next gen of products that we would develop. And I thought that they would carry me into that meeting on a chariot. And while I was speaking, 2 women would fan me with grape leaves. This is in my head.
Yeah.
King Mike is in the room. And I gave my pitch on the next generation product, which would be similar but different to the one I had already created, but much more environmentally responsible, completely zero discharge. And I had tweaked around in my head with the concept of it, and I thought I can do this. So I pitched it to them, and they said no. And I appealed, and then my boss said the one word that started my company. His retort to me when I told him, "I think you're wrong," was one word. It started with F. It had 4 letters, and it wasn't that word. I said, "I think you're wrong." And he looked at me with disdain and with just, I don't know. It was just, he just looked at me with no respect, and he said, "Fine." Like, Okay, I'm wrong. Fine. I don't care what you think. And that word in that instant started my company in my head. And I spent every night and every weekend working on the next gen. It turned out to be a completely different design, but working on the next product that I would create. And once I got it to the point where it looked like it could become viable, I gave my notice. I left the company. I started my new company, and 3 months later, I got sued by my old company. So, and that was a journey.
Who's been your hero? Who's been the one that's been an inspirational force for you in your career?
Mm, great question. I quickly started getting involved in our industry's trade association. It's called SMTA, Surface Mount Technology Association, for which today I serve on their board of directors. But then I was new. I was suffering imposter syndrome. I started speaking at these conferences in a complete cold sweat, knowing I was going to be outed at any particular moment. And I met some senior engineers from major defense companies that I don't know. They either felt sorry for me or they saw potential. I'm not sure which one it was. And they kind of took me under their wing and started giving me advice and encouragement, more importantly. And uh, that really made a difference in my early career. That got me out of my shell. And then the other, I'd say a hero, although I've never met the guy, but I have a lot of respect for him, is Richard Branson
Yeah.
from Virgin Group. Uh, in that, he is a very non-typical CEO. He's wild, he's crazy, he doesn't draw in between the lines. He's probably on a spectrum somewhere, I'm sure, in a good way. Not that there's a bad way, but in a way that that society would deem positive. Um, and I just like the fact that he's wildly successful, even in his failures, he's successful, and he learned probably the hard way that there's limits to his capabilities. He's got strengths. He's certainly got weaknesses, and he knows what his he knows what his lane is in terms of what he's supposed to be doing at the company. And he hires great, talented team members to run his companies. His ego doesn't, at least from the outside in, doesn't seem to get in the way.
Yeah.
Where I think most businesses fail because the founder's ego gets in the way
Yeah.
and they think that they're the smartest person in the room, which they might be, because
Right.
generally this is particular law that states that if you're a 10, you'll always hire a nine, and the nines will start hiring eights, and the eights will start hiring fours, and it's a degradation over the years. So I really like Richard Branson's style. I like the fact that um, he doesn't play by the rules and he sets his own rules. And I just find that inspirational.
So, what gets you up every day to do this work that you do, to do it at a high level, to take care of your own soul? What has been that consistent drive to evolve as a person?
I'm a big believer, as Pollyannish as this will sound, um, any company needs to be greater than the sum of its parts. Meaning, if you're making shoelaces for a living, do something beyond the shoelaces. Create a foundation, make the world a better place. Um, that could be through environmental means. It could be through philanthropic means. It could be through a number of different avenues. There's no limit. But I do believe that we have the ability as entrepreneurs and as business leaders to make an impact in the world, whether that's an impact personally with your team or someone associated with your team or your company, with young people in a scholastic setting, college students, whatever touches your heart. Make the world a better place. And I have this theory. It's totally metaphorical. It's not spiritual, but I refer to the business gods. The business gods have been very patient with me, and they teach me lessons all the time. Sometimes they hit me over the head with a mallet, like whack-a-mole. And I deserved over the years, my business has been around 33 years now, and I've deserved 100 times to go out of business. And just when I think, okay, it's over, there's nothing I can do, um, I think the business gods get together and they go, yeah, he needs to go. Yeah, he's screwed everything up. He's hopeless. And then one of them goes, well, wait a minute. Look what he's doing over here. Look what that company's doing. Ah, okay, fine. Last time, we're going to give him a pass. We're going to save him. I think that has to do with, the good we do in the world.
Yeah.
So that gets me up in the morning. And I'm a creator at heart. Whether I'm creating webinars or workshops or video content or producing and hosting webinars or speaking in front of a lectern, writing papers. I love to create or designing machines. I'm just, I guess I'm a creator. I never would have thought I was, but I just love to create something out of nothing. And that gets me up in the morning. That and trying to do something good whenever I can.
Yeah.
Those things get me up in the morning.
What are you ultimately the proudest of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved to? What are you the proudest of?
Our company changed the way a certain process is done, um, which was historically not green at all. It was dangerous. The chemicals that were used were carcinogens. Um, they were responsible for ozone depletion, which is why they were eventually banned. And the industry refused to look at any other format. They were just hell-bent on sticking with what worked and really no regard for any environmental or health impact or even safety impact. And when we came out, the entire industry thought we were nuts. It's like, no one's going to buy that. Okay, fine. Even if it works, no one's going to buy it because it reminds them of a dishwasher. It was a bit of a joke because it looks very much like a dishwasher. And we just kept at it. We just kept promoting it. We kept speaking at technical conferences about the benefits of this type of technology. Um, we kept talking about the issues that are happening if boards aren't subjected to our type or a similar type of process. Um, we concentrated on the problem and the best practice solutions. And I think we were largely responsible for changing how our entire industry thinks about that issue. And we part of it was there was not a lot of other choice. We were kind of pioneers in that world. But when there became choice, we became the leader in that. And I think I'm very proud of the fact that we changed our little world. And how did that land? It's not just ego. Hey, look what I did. I changed everyone's thinking. The impact is every year, every single year, we produce enough equipment to save 20 million gallons of water every year, about 22 million gallons of water every year. And and I base that off of if we didn't design this type of equipment and assuming no one else did, which is probably a wild assumption, but let's just assume no one else did. If the industry was using what they used before, there'd be 22 million gallons of water a year going down the drain and being consumed just by our customers, not to mention all the other cleaner companies that are out there. Now, that's what's 22 million gallons. If you took a 5-gallon water bottle that you would have at a water dispenser at your office, stood them up side by side from Los Angeles to Texas and back, that's how much water one little company of 35 people saves in one year.
Wow.
That's just us. So I'm very proud of that. because it costs energy to treat water. It costs a lot more energy to dispose of the water and treat the water. It costs energy to, pump the water out of a reservoir and make it potable. Um, and living in California, we actually don't have much water. We steal all our water from other states,
Yeah.
and anyone in Colorado and surrounding states are like, "Yep, you guys do." Well, so I'm very cognizant of the fact that water is a scarce resource in some parts of the world, abundant in other parts of the world. But either way, whether it's abundant or scarce, it's still a resource. It still costs money. It still costs energy, which affects the environment. So if you can save it at with zero downside, win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've opened the door here pretty good. If anybody wants to tune in to your Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast, reach out to you, any of the good business, where's the best place for people to go?
Um, I'll give them a few options if they want to watch conversations like this with other entrepreneurs. And I got to get you on the show too, Joe.
Yeah.
Um, Go to reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com.
Okay.
And if you put Mike at in front of that, that's my email address. If you want to really geek out and find out what we do in the electronics world, um, and and uh, and maybe open a whole new vision of what it's like to build electronics, aqueoustech.com. Aqueous means water, so aqueoustech.com. And that's what we do. And then if you want to watch or listen to podcasts on the subject of the reliability of electronics, I host that. That's called Reliability Matters, and that's reliabilitymatterspodcast.com.
Okay. I will put all these links.
Lots of choices.
Yeah, for sure. I will put all these links in the show notes. Mike, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you. And thanks for having me, Joe. And I appreciate you doing this show.
Yeah, absolutely.